But I digress again. This beautiful black young attorney, married to a minister, was Mrs. Georgette Greenlee Finney. And guess what, y'all? She is starting seminary in 2008. I believe she's going to the Divinity School, University of Chicago. Georgette was 12 years old when she became my play daughter, and she and Donald Young grew up in this church together. Donald used to call her mother Mommy. I've got one picture of Donald and Georgette when they were both preteens, Georgette and Donald, sitting at a table at the church picnic. My daughter, Jerry, was Georgette's big sister at Lindblom High School, and Jerry called Georgette on Sunday to tell her about Donald's murder. And Georgette came to see how Donald's daddy and her play dad were doing on Sunday afternoon. And one of the things we talked about was the difference between kids like her and Donald and kids like her sister and my oldest kids who were raised in the church. The difference between them and the kids that she was working with and is working with in the Woodlawn community, who are 2 and 3 generations removed from the church. Their mamas didn't go to church, and their mamas are in their teens and early 20s. Their grandmamas didn't go to church, and their grandmamas are in their late 30s and early 40s. And their great-grandmamas didn't go to church, and their great-grandmamas are my age in their 60s. Do you have any idea, she asked me, of how hard it is to get children interested in church when nobody in their family was raised in the church? My mind immediately ran back to last Wednesday and to last Saturday and to my childhood. On Wednesday, I had the misfortune of sitting in my barber's chair while she had on WVON and Reverend Al Sharpton's talk show. And the topic under discussion last week on Reverend Sharpton's show that day was about the celebration of Christmas. The ignorance that I heard being spewed across the airwaves from the mouths of black folk who are mad at the church, don't do church, don't like church, done heard some black nationalist who likewise was not raised in the church, but who heard or who read some ignorant pamphlet explaining how Christmas was a pagan holiday, yada, 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 yada. Most people don't even know when you say pagan, they're talking about African. They mean not Christian. The ignorance was incredible. Then on Saturday, I got a letter from a prisoner in Pinckneyville. Y'all, I have tried for almost 30 years now to carry on correspondence with brothers and sisters who are incarcerated. Some are guilty and some are innocent. Some are in the joint because of bad things that they did, and some are in the joint because of bad decisions and bad choices that they made. Whether a bad deed or bad decision, I write my prisoners regardless. Some have accepted Christ across the years. Some have had their lives transformed, turned completely around, changed forever because of Jesus. Some are doing life but have a brand new life and are leading others to meet the light of the world. Some have gotten out, joined our church, and now work in our church. Some work with our prison ministry, and some work in other ministries. Some reach back into the prisons to bring hope to their brothers and sisters that they left behind bars, and some put the prison experience completely in the past and work in other ministries to try and keep somebody else from making the same mistakes that they made. Our prison ministry does an awesome work of getting folk in the thug life to get their sights on a different life. And working along with our prison ministry, I write each prisoner who reaches out for help and for hope. But this prisoner, whose letter I got on Saturday, this prisoner is not one of our regular prisoners with whom we are in correspondence. This prisoner in Pinckneyville had heard about us from some other prisoners that we write, and he felt it incumbent upon himself to write me and set me straight about why Christmas is celebrated on December the 21st. The Romans, the pagan midwinter solstice, why it is wrong to worship on Sunday worshiping the S-U-N, Son, and how we shouldn't even be calling Yeshua HaMashiach Jesus, and on by what the Bible says, yada, 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 yada. A biblical expert in the joint. Not just doing time, doing from now on, and an authority on theological discourse. And as Georgette and I talked on the night Donald was murdered probably by another budding theologian, soon to be doing life in the joint and writing great philosophical treatises from his cell. As Georgette and I talked, I thought about that generation, or those generations who were not raised in the church, and I felt sorry for them. Their biblical ignorance, equaled only by their cultural ignorance, multiplied by miseducation that taught them nothing about their racial history, their African heritage, or the rich legacy bequeathed to them by their African ancestors. That ignorance is exacerbated by not having been raised in a Christian church or a Christian congregation where the folk were bicultural and who were fluent in both cultures, with their faith being buttressed by and balanced with some good old-fashioned common sense.